Hey guys, got a bit of a different video for you today. As you can see, we're going to be doing a screen share, and this is a full Miss America interview that Sasha Sloan, who was Miss Utah 2021, I believe, Sasha Sloan was brave enough to put up on her YouTube channel. Now, full disclosure, I don't know Sasha. I hadn't heard about Sasha until today. And the reason I found out was I was Googling for pageant interview answers, as in actual recordings of people who were giving pageant interview answers. I wanted to find the best ones and then break down for you what I thought would make those answers good versus bad. Because if you actually want to get good at interview, the first thing I think you need to know is, well, what makes the difference between a good answer and a bad answer? And so I happened to find Sasha's video. I also haven't watched this through at all. So it's 10 minutes long. I have no idea what she's going to say, what questions the judges are going to ask. And so I'm telling you that because this is unscripted, it's real, and I want to give you my point of view if I was a judge sitting there, what I would be thinking, and then also some feedback on Sasha's performance. But I must emphasize, it's incredibly brave of anyone to put up their entire interview. So I give massive props to Sasha for that. Also, there was another video on her channel, which I did watch before watching this, which were her interview tips. Now, this might sound a bit weird because, as you guys know, or hopefully you know, we've got a mock interview session coming up on Thursday, the 12th of December at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, but Thursday, the 12th of December. To apply, just go to onlinepageantacademy.com. You can find out all about it there. It's going to be 3 judges, myself, Danielle, former Miss Earth USA, and Gracie, who's our branding expert and also a former Miss Earth USA contestant, was in the Elemental Court, and a former Miss Teen USA top 16. So I won't push you any more on that because I want to get to the video. But what I was going to say, her interview tips are amazing. Like, I really like what she had to say. Again, I have no idea who Sasha is, hadn't heard of her before today, but I think a lot of her tips and advice are on point and on the money. And I think you can trust them because obviously she was in Miss America, got, I think it was top 10, top 15. She did well. And you can't do well in Miss America without the interview. The Miss America interview, so you know, is 10 minutes long. At least it was at the time of this recording. And I've heard similar from Gracie. So it's longer than a lot of other interviews, but it's still short enough that you would need to practice making those answers of yours short, concise, precise, which is why I think it's a good place to look at and for me to react and give my thoughts, because it's short enough to force you to do that, but it's long enough that a lot of you might be thinking, oh my God, I can barely make it through a 2-minute pageant interview. How am I going to make it through a 10-minute interview? I know some of you might be a bit weird like me. You're going like 10 minutes. Yes, it's longer. Cool. But, you know, we're not all the same. So let's go through this again. I've not seen it at all. So let's see.
Welcome.
Hey. Hello.
Hi, nice to meet
All right. I mean, first off, when she sits down at the table, obviously she seems to be introduced by someone at the back. She looks super friendly and super ready to engage. That's massively important. You don't want to walk into the room and look glum. She looks, she's obviously dressed up, but not too much so. All black. Looks like a professional interview. More professional than, I will say, some of the judges sitting at the table look. But that's for a discussion for another day.
you. Nice to meet you too.
You've built up quite a social media following.
Just be very careful. They've put her on a swiveling chair. I can tell you from having done not a lot of pageant, I haven't sat in a pageant interview as a pageant contestant, obviously, but from filming a lot of video, you don't want to be sitting on a swiveling chair, because what tends to happen is you really can't help just starting to swivel side to side. So she can't do anything about that. I'm just pointing out, if they do put you on a swivel chair, be mindful of that fact and maybe plant yourself somehow, hold onto the table or what have you.
That is impressive, but if you woke up tomorrow and there was no social media, how would you use your platform as Miss America to spread your initiative?
If I lost my social media, I think I'd have to lean into my training as a political scientist. I got a degree from Brigham Young University. I'm actually 2 classes short of finishing, thanks to Miss Utah. But I learned a lot of skills about how to unpack research. And I would go across the country speaking to different groups and help explain some of the research and data behind immigration and asylum seekers, and use that knowledge to help combat some of the negative stereotypes and misconceptions that many people have about immigrants.
So, first thing first, I would say, for my liking, there's maybe a bit too much hands here from Sasha. I love her answer. I think she made her point well, and I think she answered the question well. I think she also segued into something that she's passionate about well, highlighting that. So hopefully that's like you're leaving a breadcrumb trail that the judges can follow. I thought the hands were a little bit distracting, and it might be just because it's the beginning of the interview, she's nervous, she's getting some of that nervous energy out. But I would say that's a fairly solid start.
I love that. So while we're on the subject of TikTok followings and etc.
Yes.
What are the key things that you've done to grow your account, and how are you going to apply them to the Miss America account?
I think
And I also wanted to say, just on the first answer, and again here on the second answer, you can see she's taking a bit of time to respond. So if you've got an answer ready to go, fine. If you need a bit of time to think, take a little bit of time to think rather than just launching right into it. The mistake I see a lot of people do is they start talking immediately, but they don't really have anything to say. They haven't formulated their answer. And so the first thing they say is, better just to keep their mouth shut, think, and then, engage brain before talking, so to speak.
the biggest thing that I've done with my account is I've really learned how
You're
to
seeing the
lean
hands
into
again.
a brand, how to have consistent branding, and also I've learned that what people want to see online is someone who is real. And that means that I do not show up in my full pageant makeup every day. That means making videos of myself in my bedroom, or time-lapsing my work on my computer, or just taking real, raw, authentic content, talking about things that I love about Harry Potter. I'm very unfiltered. I post once a week at least without makeup to just keep it authentic and fresh.
Okay, so you're seeing a couple of things here. So one, she's distancing or making herself stand out from the competition by saying that she doesn't show up in the makeup every day. I will say from the videos that I've seen, because I looked at her YouTube channel, she's completely honest about that. There are a lot of videos there where she's just sitting on her bed, but she still looks amazing, but she's not dolled up in pageant makeup. Again, you can see a bit of the hands happening, and she's telling you a little bit more about, again, behind the scenes. Can you see she's not just answering the question about, how would I use TikTok, for example, because she's very big on TikTok, I think, over 1 million followers. She's not just answering the question like straight, like I would do this, and this. She's using the question as a means to show more about herself, more about her CV, her resume, what sets her apart.
And I know that people on TikTok, they want to look at you and think that you're their best friend. They don't want you to be selling them something all the time. They want to build that friendship. And so in the role of Miss America, I would want to break down some of the misconceptions.
Laying that breadcrumb that if she were to be Miss America, she's, laying that, like, that she's ready. She's telling the judges, hey, if I was Miss America, I would do this, which puts them more at ease of, okay, is this girl actually ready? And she's showing that she's actually given thought to, yes, if I were to win Miss America, this is what I would do.
It's about, the perfect pageant girl, and try to show up and show, hey, Miss America is just real. She's a raw, honest girl who's just trying to be her best and do something good in the world.
I think if you also watch, she's making eye contact with each of the judges. So if we go forwards a little bit, you can see that there are 4 judges at the table, and she's not just zoning in on the one judge who asks the question, she's actually taking the time to look at all 4 of the judges.
So what do you, kind of leaning into that a little bit?
I would also say I'm giving you just my raw unfiltered thoughts here. In the chair she's sitting, she's not seated back in the chair. I mean, this sort of seat, if you sat back in it, you'd probably just fall off. But she's sitting forward a little bit. Her body posture in general is pretty good. She could maybe sit upright a little bit more. That's being just very extremely harsh because, I haven't done this sort of thing myself.
More, so the brand of Miss America that
Yes.
you want to portray, touch on it a little bit, go a little bit deeper, and like what kind of stuff you're going to be discussing on social media and the messages that you want to get across.
To me, Miss America is a professional development organization. I think it's one of the best incubators for women in politics, women in media, women in business. And I want to show the skills that I've gained through the Miss America organization. I was able to build a brand that netted $100,000 in the first 100 days, and we're about to pass our $1 million mark in revenue. And that is because of the skills that I learned from Miss America.
So that's incredibly powerful to put out numbers like that. I mean, obviously, you're going to go into your interview. I would encourage you to do your research, to do your keeping up to date with the news, etc., etc., etc. But if you have something that you can pull out like that, which for me as an entrepreneur, I don't know who the judges are on the table, but me as an entrepreneur, someone who can say that about their business and lay it out in cold, hard, black and white statistics, that's incredibly impactful. And so me as a judge, if I was listening to that, I'd be like, wow, that's impressive. That's real numbers. That's not just TikTok following, that's money. And I would want to find out how she did that. But also, you got to think it's about what that means about this person. If this person is able to create an actual cash positive business, that's not just someone who says, I'm an entrepreneur. This is now, in my eyes, a successful entrepreneur or a businesswoman. Completely different kettle of fish.
Things like branding, things like being able to talk and communicate my ideas to a camera. I've been able to get my internship in political science because I got hired on the spot because I was in the top 5 at Miss Utah, and they knew what that meant. They knew how hard it is to achieve that. And so I would show young women, hey, if you want to launch into being a girl boss, if you want to go have a professional career, go to Miss America and gain those skills as you compete for many years and become the best version of yourself.
So you can see all that thing that I said that I was impressed by, and then she's wrapped that up by saying, and I give credit, she said at the beginning of her answer as well, I give credit to the Miss America system for that. So that's a very good way of saying that, giving credit to the system and showing that you and the system are a good fit, because, you might be a good fit for Miss USA, but are you a good fit for Miss America versus all these other systems? Still using the hands quite a lot, but I think the hand gestures now are less distracting because I've sort of gotten used to them. But I think when she's trying to drive her points home, the hand gestures are less distracting than maybe they were at the beginning.
So in a little over a year, you have $1 million of revenue. That's impressive. Yeah. So how exactly did you accomplish that? Do you have a big team? How did you do it?
It was kind of like getting struck by lightning, but I had spent 10 years of my life building a lightning rod. I'm a photographer. I trained.
That's a really neat turn of phrase. And that's the sort of thing that you only get from practice. So kind of getting struck by lightning, but it was like I spent 10 years making the lightning rod. That's a really cool phrase. That's one way, because I was asked a question, or it was suggested to me I should talk about how to structure my interview answers so that I'm memorable. I think one of the ways, there are many ways of doing it, but one of the ways is by having cool turns of phrases or things that you can be memorable for. So, for example, I worked with Jordan Louise Smith, who was Miss Earth England, and we worked on what can she be memorable for. And one of the things was that her pupils were 2 different colors. And so, that by itself doesn't mean you're going to be memorable, but that can build into something. You want the memorable thing to be very simple. You're not going to really be memorable for a 5,000 word dissertation, but something that you can be easily memorable for. You have to offer that so that you can be memorable in the first place.
Myself to do photography and shot weddings all through college. I know videography. I grew up as a child actor, and so I know how to be on a camera and speak. I had my own TV show when I was 14.
Okay, and again, sorry to interrupt. You can watch this whole video. I certainly encourage you to do so, but I just stopped whilst I got this in my mind. You can see she's hardworking, very comfortable in front of a video, in front of a camera. So what are you thinking? Okay, this girl's confident. She knows how to speak. She knows how to present herself. Kind of important if you're picking a title holder.
And so all of these skills that I developed, branding, I ran an Etsy shop through college, it was like a perfect storm.
Etsy, again, so as an entrepreneur, it's important that she puts that there because that's very specific. So I know what an Etsy store is, and she's not just talking about, I want to be an entrepreneur. She's got an Etsy store, which is something that kind of like Shopify. It's a platform that allows you to sell. It's very often used for creatives, like things like selling mugs, t-shirts, or paintings or drawings or things like that. So again, she's being specific. So I know she's not just talking a good game. She's actually doing this.
And I saw it happening on TikTok. I was really lucky as an entrepreneur that I saw the shift to video branding. And I was able to jump in, and I was one of the first companies and creators to monetize my platform and start a business before the other young people were starting to think, oh, wait a minute, I could make money off of these viral videos. And so it was kind of a perfect storm of skills that I had been building for my whole life, and honestly through the Miss America organization. And the first video that I ever had go viral was a time lapse, a mashup of all of my practicing for my talent for Miss Utah. And it shows me over the course of years. You can see my hair turn blonde, you can see the growth. And when people saw that and saw the real girl and the real work behind the scenes in my ugly sweatpants and stuff, it made them be like, oh, I want to cheer for this girl, I want to be her friend. And so it was a lot of things. So
where is the revenue coming?
That was a really cool idea that she just let slip there as doing a time lapse of practicing her talent, and you can actually see her hair change color. And again, you want to sort of answer, because the question was like, well, the thing was, how can you be memorable? You got to understand that on a panel of judges, like there are 4 here, each one of them is probably going to be bringing something different to the table. They're not all going to be, let's say, entrepreneurs. They're not all going to be creators, or not all going to be interested in videography. But if you can put out feelers in a few different ways, and hopefully if you're aware as to what the judges, how the judges are looking at you, you generally should be able to tell when you have said something or shown something in your resume that a judge can resonate with, like, oh, you're an entrepreneur, me too. Then hopefully you'll be able to see that and lock into that. But you can see that she's doing that really, really well here.
Coming from?
I designed collage walls.
Okay.
So we had this crazy viral product.
So I was going to say, as a creative, because if you are in social media, which all of you are because you're pageant girls, but I think it's really cool that she she talked about her time-lapse idea. That's a really cool creative idea. So again, showing that she has a certain skill set. In this sense, she's creative with video, which also, if I'm looking for a title holder, video is super important. And being a competent content creator, super important.
The idea to make just a stack of images of my photography and graphic designs.
So did you take all the pictures?
We bought some of the images, some of them I photographed all of them. So for example, we have a space one. There's not a lot of space that you can go buy in stock photos, so I shot cosplayers. And we've built out a team now. I have 8 employees, so they've been running it since I won Miss Utah, and I sold out a 50% equity share of the company to an operations team to take over.
Okay, so again, She talked about cosplayer. So that's an interesting thing. If you're a bit of a geek or a nerd or you game cosplayer, that will catch your attention. And then when she talked about having employees, again, if you're an entrepreneur or you're a business owner, that is a huge point of difference, because it's one thing to be doing things by yourself, but it's a whole other kettle of fish. It's a big step up if you actually have a team working for you.
So I've just been doing the creative since.
So how are you going to juggle both if you become Miss America?
Luckily, I haven't done any operations for our company since winning, because about 2 months before I offloaded all of that. I was still the public face of the brand, but I haven't done any work for Archive Sunday, my company, since winning. So I would just pass it off to the team. I trust them a lot. We've scaled back in what we've done. Before, we were making a lot of money off of clothing lines, and I didn't feel comfortable passing that to someone else. I wanted it to be me and my style. So I would just wait, let the team keep the wheels turning for another year, and then pick it up after my year as Miss America.
I will say again, she was Miss Utah 2021, so I'm not exactly sure when this interview was shot. I did just see that Archive Sunday, I think it's on a temporary break, or she might have wound down operations that might not even exist yet. I mean, it's the website's there, but I don't know if they're still doing business. I want you to get that that's fine. Like if you talk about something in a pageant interview and then you've tried it, and then for whatever reason, life changes. We transition. So that's fine. What I will also say is that talking about learning to delegate, that also is a very important skill. Not only is a business, remember, you're trying to appeal to as many different people as possible. Talking about delegation as a business owner, you're appealing to entrepreneurs, CEOs. When you talk about delegation also as a skill, now you're talking about leadership. That's something that's incredibly important. So if you were to win Miss America or any pageant title, you cannot do everything yourself. So one of the big things obviously is going to be your ability to work with a team. And she's just pointed out that she not only built her own team, but that she's practicing those leadership and delegation skills.
Okay, great.
What character did you perform on Walt Disney?
I was Cinderella, and what?
And now that question might either have come from the fact that she said cosplay, but I think it's more coming from the resume. So the pageant judges, I imagine, have Sasha's resume here. She must have listed that down somewhere. And so that's a question based off her resume. I will say, again, in Sasha's video talking about pageant interview tips, she does talk about how to use the paperwork. The resume will depend on which system you're in, but using that as a way to almost control the questions you're going to get in an interview, because you can't rely on the judges having researched you before the interview, so that they will have read your resume. Hopefully they're doing their job. And so you want to kind of leave breadcrumbs for them to follow. And so if you want a certain question, you got to put the teaser on the resume. If you don't want a certain question, don't put it in the resume. And that's something that Sasha says. She points out one of her friends put something about a black and white movie in her resume, and then they started asking her about black and white movies, but she'd only watched that one black and white movie, so it led to a bit of an awkward exchange in the interview. So that pageant paperwork is also an incredibly important part of making sure you have a successful interview.
What I love about Cinderella is that some people think of her as kind of this, wilting flower, but Cinderella is a person who survived an abusive childhood in an abusive home. And I look at her and I think she's such an inspiration for maintaining your kindness and your sweetness even when life is hard. I had an experience in the role of Pluto, actually, at Disney, when there was a family at a breakfast table, and I spent a long time with him trying to get this one little boy to come out of his shell, and he wasn't taking it, he wasn't taking the bait, so finally I left the table, and as I was leaving, he said, "Bye-bye, Pluto." And the mom, as I was going back to off stage, she came and grabbed my arm, and she said, "I want you to know my son is autistic and nonverbal," and those are some of the only words we've ever heard him say. And I got to have moments like that at Disney all the time. And it's what gave me the fire to come compete for Miss Utah, because I wanted to have more opportunities to serve people like that.
So I often talk about the power of storytelling, and that's exactly why. That's so much more impactful than saying, so what Sasha said, that story is so much more impactful. Again, we're talking about being memorable. You're going to remember her for that story that she just told, versus if she had just said, "Oh yeah, I worked at Disney and I was Pluto." I will say, when she was telling the story about being, her opinion on Cinderella and how it's about a story of overcoming this, overcoming that. Yes, it is. I think for my taste, that's reading a little bit too much into it, but that's just a personal preference.
Sasha, let's talk about your social impact initiative, Refugees Welcome. I read about your visit to Greece, but why do you think you are in a position to really...
One thing, I don't know if you're picking this up on the audio, but Sasha will quite frequently say, as the judge is asking the question. For me, I think she's doing it a little bit too much. I do think it's a good sign, obviously, to show the judges that you are hearing their questions and you're sort of affirming them as they're asking the question. Like, you're kind of encouraging the judges, as weird as it might sound. But I think if you do it too often, it sounds a little bit, it can get a bit repetitive.
Change something that's a huge national conversation?
Well, my online channel gets 3 to 5 million views per week.
Statistics, again, important.
And I recognize that is a huge position of privilege. It's a huge position of power. And as I thought about the work that I've done in the social sector, and I thought about the experiences I had working for 3 months in Greece, I knew that this was an issue that I wanted to use my platform to educate. And frankly, I have heard terrifying things in the mainstream media about refugees. And there is so much misinformation out there. And I'm a trained political scientist. I know how to look at a study and break it down. And I just felt like I had a moral responsibility to do something with that platform.
This is, nothing wrong with their answer. This is leading into particularly tricky territory once you start bringing up the fact that, political science, and you bring up the mainstream media. And if you're happy to go there, go there. If you don't want to go there, don't go there. It's up to you. I will say in Miss America, it's probably more on point to be doing this. But just be wary. When you bring up certain opinions, like if you use the phrase mainstream media, it's already sort of walking on thin ice, let's say. So if you're going to go there, but know your stuff is all I'm saying.
Looking at the studies,
yes.
What have you done to put yourself in positions to meet these refugees and understand their experiences?
First is that I worked in Greece. The second is I've been working with an advocacy group this year called Their Story is Our Story. And my co-author, her name is Sharouk Al-Jawari. We've spent the last 6 months together developing a curriculum for students in Utah. And there's very much a right and a wrong way to go about doing refugee advocacy. It is not my role to show up and serve refugees. It's not my role to speak for refugees. I want to use the Miss America podium to amplify the advocacy work that's already being done by the refugee community. So instead of doing a solo school tour as Miss Utah, I opted to do a dual school tour with Sharouk to give her those opportunities. And every time that I got a media request, I gave them Sharouk's information to just give her a voice as well.
So this is a really big political conversation.
Yes.
So you're going to get people come at you and be like,
All right, so as I said, I thought it was skating on thin ice. Looks like we might be getting into politics here, which you're always told you won't get in pageant interview, but sometimes you do. So you got to be prepared for it. And if you're going to bring up labels, which in this day and age, especially given this year was an election year, you bring up anything to do with refugees or mainstream media or alternative media, or God forbid you use the words left or right, just be prepared. The reason I think you should be informed in politics, absolutely. But the reason I think it's a good idea to try and stay away from it if you can is because in this day and age, either way you go, you're immediately going to alienate 50% of the room. It doesn't matter how well reasoned your opinions are. There are just people who cannot hear the other side without losing their minds. So just be wary of that.
No, we can't even look after the people that we have in America. We
Right.
should be welcoming more people. What is
Right.
your response to that?
Accepting refugees is not a partisan issue, it's a humanitarian issue. And the data is that refugees benefit our community in every way. They are an economic benefit. They bring diversity. They are wonderful patriots. They commit crimes at much lower levels than regular Americans. And I think people just don't know that about refugees. There's so much misinformation. That's why I felt that I should use my platform online and the platform of Miss America to amplify the work that's being done already.
Okay, so I'll leave it up to your decision as to, it'd be up to you and whatever team you're working with, whether it's with us or someone else, another pageant coach, whether you would want to go down this route. Again, this was, I think, recorded, I mean, it was Miss Utah 2021, so I'm guessing this is recorded at least a couple of years ago, so not during this election year, 2024. And the issue, again, is going to come up that she quoted statistics. You say, great, well, she's got the statistics to back her up. People are going to argue that her statistics are wrong, right? So depending on which, I'm not saying that I believe those statistics are wrong. I'm just saying that's the argument that's going to come up. And you would have see this play out in 2024 because it was an election year. So once again, your call, if you want to bring up topics that might lead down a political discourse, and if that's your area of expertise, so be it. I'm just saying in this day and age, you kind of alienate half the room immediately. I mean, depending on which state you're in, it's different. But it's just like, your job as a title holder obviously is to be a leader, but also I think you want to unify. So just be, I think you want to be very mindful that if you're going to go down this route, you have to find some common ground. Very difficult in this day and age. Unify rather than divide.
I appreciate the ideology of that, but it is a partisan issue. So how do you address when you do get people asking you very politically motivated questions about border control and those type of things? How do you plan on answering that?
It would be nice if it wasn't a partisan issue. I don't want to get into political discourse here, but it's been made a partisan issue. So if I was going to answer this question, it would be, well, it's been made a partisan issue when it shouldn't have. I don't think you can really lay the blame for that on either side. I think both sides have contributed, which I think in most political situations, both sides have a responsibility. But let's see what Sasha has to say. As I said, like you bring up the label mainstream media. It's already going down the political rabbit hole. Let's see what she says.
I think it's important. I've decided to narrow the scope to refugees and asylum seekers. And refugee is a particular legal classification, not necessarily an immigrant. I recognize it's a very hot button topic. For me, I want to have less hatred and more harmony. I want less division. I want to find common ground. And so I think I would be looking towards the things that we can all agree on and help. And I think that welcoming refugees, which is a very low number, 11,000 last year, that is just a place that we could find common ground, even in a very heated debate about immigration.
So that's, I don't want to say that's clever because I don't want to say it's a dismissive tactic, but it is very good what she did. She clarified, she's not just talking about everyone, she's talking about a particular subset, and she gave the figures. Again, I don't know if they're right or wrong, 11,000. And again, this was not in 2024, this was before that. And that's a good, and what she just said there is exactly what I think, even if you have strong political opinions, that should be the crux of your message, is that you are there, especially as a pageant, a potential pageant title holder. You're not there as a politician, you're not running for office yet, right? You have to stress that you're looking for unifying ground and looking for common sense, hopefully where you can agree.
I love the idea that you want to bring unity to this topic. I think that's really powerful and obviously courageous as well. So right now at this moment, what are you doing? I'm sorry.
30 seconds for me. Okay. I wish we had more time. I have worked so hard to develop a skill of branding and digital media. And I think that for the next 100 years of Miss America, she needs to solidify her online presence. In that role, I could be able to use my experience with advocacy and with building a brand to solidify the future of this organization financially, and also set an example for how to use this platform for advocacy to impact real political change.
Thank you so much.
So it looked like someone from the back said 30 seconds, and that Sasha knew that when that happened, that she's got basically 30 seconds, I think, to make a closing statement. That's just my guess. I don't know for sure. And I think this is probably the other issue with going down the political rabbit hole. People want to go further down it because people are emotionally charged about it. They're going to keep talking about it. And then, 30 seconds, and then you have to try and, you don't have to try and talk about something else, but Sasha, what she wanted to push home was her branding. But there was a bit of a disconnect between going down that political pathway and then having to switch back to the branding. I think, look, let's just play out the rest of the video. I think that's it.
Thank you so much.
Sasha.
Great job.
Have a great day, y'all.
Okay, so I think the interview overall, her skill set is very, very good. I think she speaks very well. She presents very well. She's not umming and ahhing, maybe a bit too much hands going on. But I think just if she had controlled the interview more to stay away from that political hot button, I think the ending could have been a bit smoother, and the interview as a whole could be more cohesive. Having said that, I mean, she obviously did very well. So who am I to judge? That's just my personal opinion. And I think this is the big thing. And let me finish on this. People often they ask, and you guys, if you're applying for a mock interview session, one of the things you've asked is, well, what are judges looking for? And the answer is there's no one thing. Because like every person is different. Every pageant judge is different. And I'm here to tell you that what I'm looking for may be different to, frankly, what Danielle would look for, who's on the mock interview panel, different to what Gracie would look for, who's also on the panel. I will also say, from personal experience, you cannot rely on the fact that every judge is actually there knowing what they're doing. Sometimes they just picked one of my big pet peeves in the pageant industry is picking celebrities to be judges, specifically celebrities who don't know anything about the pageant industry, and they think they're there to pick the prettiest girl. I have sat on panels where the person next to me is just really not that good of a person and literally was just using the judging position to give people horrible marks because she was using it as a power play. And by the way, these were 5 or 6 year olds at this pageant. I feel a certain kind of way about that kind of pageant. But anyway, it's my first experience judging. I said, why not? But to answer your question as to what judges are looking for, the answer is there's no simple answer, because if I was to say, well, they're there to look for the best title holder, they're there to look for intelligence, for communication, for resume, you're assuming that the judges are competent. Now, yes, hopefully, when you get to a national level or even a state level of a pageant as big as a Miss America or Miss USA, hopefully, but not a guarantee. And so the real skill, when people ask what is a judge looking for, what you're really looking for is the answer to like, what should I say or how should I present? The real skill in the room, the only one that will work like all the time in inverted commas, is for you to be able to read the room and sort of adjust to the kind of room. Think about it, and people say, oh, but you're not being authentic. No, it's not being authentic or not. It's like you would be different in a room conversing with 5-year-olds versus conversing with your partner versus conversing with your parents. Think of it in that way. And so when you walk into a room, and if you were to go down the political rabbit hole, for example, you would be able to, just by looking at the judges, the body language, you'd be able to read whether when you give an answer, it hits home or not. And and this is building rapport. What I would say is when you find something that a judge is interested in, you want to hone in on it. So what's a judge looking for? They're interested in something that you said, hone in on it, but be mindful, especially if there's 4 people on the panel, like there were for Sasha's interview, be mindful that you don't just give one judge all your attention, because judges are human. And if you give one judge all the attention, the other 3 might get jealous. And so you do want to go down the rabbit hole when a judge shows interest in that section of what you just said, but then you also need to control it, wrap it up, so that one of the other judges can can ask a different question. So I hope that was useful. It's a bit of a different video. There are so many videos out there where, pageant influencer asking a question and then give you a 30-second clock on the screen and answer the question. I find that very, very questionable usefulness. So if you can get, and again, with our mock interview panel session on the 12th of December, you can apply at onlinepageantacademy.com, giving away a free spot, by the way, valued at just under $1,000. But if you want to simulate the environment like that, I mean, again, so if I bring it up, if you imagine that this is the interview scenario that you're going to be presented with, like Sasha was, And your idea is how you're going to prepare for this is I'm going to practice answering interview questions in my head, or I'm going to practice answering interview questions in the mirror. You can see this is a really good demonstration of what I keep saying, like, that's going to prepare you for this. If you think of this like as the firing squad, I know it's not, but for a lot of you, you will feel like emotionally, it's like, oh my God, what am I going to do? The only way to truly prepare for this, other than doing it, is to simulate that environment, which is why we're doing the mock interview, why we're doing it with a panel. You can get more than one judge's opinion, and the judge's opinion feedback may very well differ, as it should, and that's like real life. So again, if you want to simulate this environment, strongly encourage you apply to work with us, onlinepageantacademy.com. We're doing our session on the 12th of December. I'm sure we'll be doing more in the future, but that's for this year. And look, no matter whether you decide to work with us or not, maybe the timing's not right, if you want to get good at this skill set, which is incredibly important, and it's one of the skills that will translate most from pageant success to real world success, if you want to get good at this, you have to practice under these conditions. You need to simulate these conditions as best you can, and not just be practicing the question and answers in your head. I'll just close by saying thank you again to Sasha for uploading this to her YouTube channel. It's incredibly courageous of her to do that. Again, I would strongly advise you to watch her video on pageant interview tips. I thought it was very insightful, very on the money, and may well have come from some of the lessons she learned from watching her own video back. And by the way, I'm sure she doesn't think her video is perfect by any means, but it's very courageous to put her up. So I'll put a link to to Sasha's channel and her videos below. Strongly encourage you to go watch them, give her a follow on that and her social medias, etc. So I'll leave it there for today. Remember, onlinepageantacademy.com. We are closing applications on the 6th of December, which I believe is a Friday, and then our session will be on the 12th.